The influence of Islamic civilization in Al-Andalus on the European Renaissance. How Muslims enlightened Europe with knowledge. On the great historical role of Muslims in transmitting philosophy and science to Europe. This topic reveals how Islamic civilization served as a bridge through which ancient Greek philosophy and science passed into medieval Europe, eventually paving the way for the Renaissance. 1. European contact with Muslims in Al-Andalus. When the Muslims entered Al-Andalus, Islamic Spain, and established their civilization there, the fields of science, philosophy, medicine, astronomy, and mathematics flourished. Europeans, who at that time were living in the darkness of the Middle Ages, came into close contact with Muslims in Al-Andalus and found in their civilization the knowledge and learning they lacked. As a result, many European scholars regarded Muslim philosophers as their teachers. They either studied directly under them or learned from Arabic scientific and philosophical works that had been translated into Latin. 2. The Great Translation Movement. Latin was the language of scholars and intellectuals in medieval Europe. Therefore, Arabic works needed to be translated into Latin. A large-scale translation movement began, especially in Toledo, in present-day Spain, after it was taken back from the Muslims by the Christians. Among the most prominent figures behind this movement was Raymond, Archbishop of Toledo, 1130 to 1150 CE, who founded a major translation center to render Arabic philosophical and scientific works into Latin. Thanks to this center, the works of Aristotle were translated, not directly from Greek, but from Arabic, where Muslim scholars had already translated and commented on them. The commentaries of Muslim philosophers such as Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, Avicenna, and Ibn Rushd, Averroes, were also transmitted. Within only 30 years, Aristotle's logic, translated from Arabic, was being taught at the University of Paris, one of Europe's most important educational institutions. 3. Stages of the transmission of Greek knowledge. The text shows that Europeans went through 3 main stages in benefiting from Greek philosophy: translation from Arabic into Latin, direct translation from Greek after the fall of Constantinople in 1453 CE, translation of Arabic commentaries such as Ibn Rushd's works on Aristotle into Latin. 4. The role of Frederick II. Frederick II was 1155 CE, was Emperor of Sicily and Germany. He came into contact with Muslims in Sicily and the Levant during the Crusades. He admired Islamic philosophy, learned Arabic, and was able to read original philosophical works. In 1224 CE, he founded the University of Naples to translate Arabic scientific and philosophical works into Latin and Hebrew with the aim of disseminating them across Europe. Thanks to his efforts, Michael Scott translated Ibn Rushd's commentaries on Aristotle, and earlier, Ibn Sina's works had already been translated and used at the University of Paris around 1200 CE. 5. The spread of the ideas of Ibn Rushd and Ibn Sina. By the 13th century, nearly all of Ibn Rushd's works had been translated into Latin, except for a few, such as The Incoherence of the Incoherents, which was only translated in the 14th century. The universities of Bologna and Padua in Italy became leading centers for studying Averroist philosophy, which spread throughout northeastern Italy and remained influential until the 17th century. As for Ibn Sina's medical works, they remained core references in European universities well beyond the Renaissance. 6. The impact of this movement on the European Renaissance. The leading figures of the European Renaissance who led the intellectual revolution were students of these translated works or of those who had studied them. For example, Roger Bacon, the great English philosopher, derived much of his scientific knowledge from Al-Andalus and studied Averroes's philosophy.
His book on optics was inspired by the work of Ibn al-Haytham on the same subject. 7. The reaction of Christian religious authorities. The church in Al-Andalus was troubled by the fact that many Christians were studying Muslim sciences. It even criticized the Archbishop of Seville for studying Muslim philosophy, branding Muslim scholars as infidels. But despite church resistance, the influence of Islamic thought was profound and spread widely among European scholars. 8. Conclusion. As the European historian Lecky summarized, the intellectual awakening of Europe did not begin until learning moved out of the monasteries, where it was limited to clergy, and into universities, where it became accessible to students and researchers. Europe did not achieve its intellectual freedom except through interaction with Islamic science, Greek ideas transmitted by Muslims, and the development of industrial independence. This intellectual shift broke the Church's monopoly over thought and ushered in the European Renaissance. Educational summary for students. Islamic civilization was the bridge through which Greek philosophy and science were transmitted to Europe. Through Al-Andalus and Sicily, the Great Translation movement began. With the efforts of scholars like Raymond and Frederick, and through the works of Avicenna, Averroes, and Ibn al-Haytham, the European Renaissance was born.